Hey friends, and welcome to the Wine CEO podcast show. My name is Sarah and I'm a certified sommelier and host of the Wine CEO podcast. And today I am so excited to be introducing you to an incredible winemaker who I respect greatly, and that is Nicole Hitchcock. Nicole is the head winemaker at J Vineyards in Healdsburg, California in Sonoma. And Nicole was actually named the 2022 Wine Spectator Winemaker of the Year. So an incredible honor. And let me tell you, it could not go to a more deserving person. So join me as we dive into my conversation with Nicole from J Vineyards. Well, Wine CEO podcast listeners, I am so excited because today on the show, I have Nicole Hitchcock from J Vineyards and Winery. And I've really been looking forward to this podcast interview because not only do I love connecting with fellow women in the wine industry, but Nicole has an amazing set of experience. She's been a winemaker in Northern California for years, and she actually was named the 2022 Winemaker of the Year by Wine Enthusiast, an amazing award. So I've really been looking forward to this conversation. So Nicole, welcome so much to the Wine CEO podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, so thrilled that you could make the time to chat with me today. And I would love if you could start off and maybe just talk to our listeners a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into wine and all the way up through your current role at J Vineyards.
Sure. So I am just now coming up on my 23rd harvest in the industry, which is incredibly hard to believe because time definitely flies when you're having fun. I've been at J since 2015, and I can say it's truly been the highlight of my career. I remember visiting J probably 20 years ago and doing the food and wine tasting experience back then, and commenting to my friends that someday I hoped to make wines in such a setting. So it's really incredible how things come full circle. I was born and raised in California. I grew up on the Central Coast in the town called Carmel, and I worked in food and restaurants and served food and wine. And it was, as you know, it was a very food and wine oriented area, and still is today. And so working in restaurants, serving wine, being made to talk about wine and tell the stories of wine from a young age is what really got me inspired to want to pursue a career in winemaking. And so, I mean, I count myself as one of the lucky ones. I was 18 years old and off to college, and somehow I knew that I wanted to become a winemaker. And I didn't come from a winemaking family at all either. My parents drank wine on a semi-regular basis in our home, but we weren't this big involved family in the wine business, and so I knew that I had always valued creativity. I loved being outdoors. I loved experimenting with things, all of those science projects from a young age. And so putting all of those together into where I thought I wanted to go in terms of a career, winemaking was it. So I decided to study at the University of California, Davis, and studied viticulture and enology there. I also minored in Italian, and that's really what set me out on a trajectory for the rest of my career, was just that foundational education.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And I know UC Davis obviously has an incredible history of being an amazing school for winemakers. So after you left UC Davis, what were some of the, I would say, formidable experiences that you had that you feel really prepared you to be able to step into your current role at J Vineyards?
I graduated and I started doing internships. So I actually, before graduating, I worked at an agriturismo in Umbria, Italy, that had a working vineyard. And so got to experience that. It was incredible. I worked at a small high-end Pinot Noir and Chardonnay producer in Carneros, kind of cutting my teeth. I also worked in Western Australia in just outside of the Margaret River region. And that was an incredible experience as well. And so learning the fundamentals of working in the cellar, understanding the laboratories, and just really what some of the decisions that winemakers face on a daily or even longer term basis at that point were really formative for me. So after this series of internships, I started getting, I got into winemaking at its fundamental level. So I've since then I've worked in wineries really all around Northern California, both small scale and larger scale. I moved up to the town of Healdsburg in 2010 and started working out in the Dry Creek Valley, really focusing on Chardonnay out there. And then when the time came in 2015, and I was given the opportunity to join J Vineyards and Winery as the head winemaker, I absolutely jumped at the chance. Like I mentioned before, J is a winery that I had always thought very highly of. I loved the wines. I loved the setting. I loved the food and wine type of focus because I feel like it really spoke to me and my own background. And so when I joined the team, it was really a dream come true. And so here we are, nearly 9 harvests later, and I'm still here and loving it.
So was J Vineyards your first opportunity to be a head winemaker for a winery?
I led winemaking before in different aspects, but this was really the first opportunity where I really oversaw all of the wines under a winery umbrella. So today I oversee our sparkling portfolio, our Pinot Noir, our Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, Rosé. All of the wines that we make I'm overseeing, which is great.
And that's a perfect segue because I was just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your portfolio and some of the wines that you have. So you just mentioned sparkling, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Rosé. So obviously a large portfolio, but obviously some grapes that would usually be used for both still and sparkling anyway. So there's good overlap there. So can you just give us kind of a brief overview into the portfolio and maybe highlight 1 or 2 things that you're really, really proud of?
I'm really proud of our portfolio as a whole, I've got to say, because I think it has a lot of breadth, both from a stylistic standpoint, as well as from accessibility standpoint, so different price points for consumers. So from a breadth standpoint, we make a lot of different styles of many different varieties. I mentioned that the wines that we make, there's about 30 wines total within our portfolio. And many of these are direct to consumer, but some of them are also distributed and available nationwide, and even some are international. So sometimes people are surprised to know that we make so many wines. It's 12 sparklings, it's 10 Pinots, 5 Chardonnays. We now make 3 Pinot Gris and a Rosé. And then from a stylistic standpoint, I'll use the sparkling as an example. Of the 12 sparklings, these range from different dosage or sweetness levels, from very, very dry and bracing up to nice and rounded and more fruit forward. They range in terms of varietal makeup, so which types of grapes go into each one of the wines. And then they also vary from an aging perspective. We've got some wines that age for 24 months in the bottle, and we've got some that range upwards of 7 years. And so all of the sparkling wines that we make within our portfolio are all done via the traditional method. So this is a very time-intensive, labor-intensive, cost-intensive approach to sparkling winemaking. But from our standpoint, we think it's really important for producing top-notch sparkling wine from our home here in the Russian River Valley of Sonoma County. My favorite, people always ask me, who is my favorite child and of the portfolio, and it's usually a different answer every day, I've got to say, but I am particularly proud of our Blanc de Noir. I love that wine. It's delicious. It's a vintage dated 100% Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier sparkling wine. It's delicious. And then I love our still Pinot Noir portfolio as well. There's a big focus on site-specific and terroir-driven Pinots within every single one of the different bottles that we produce. So we own 6 estate vineyard properties across the Russian River Valley and Sonoma coast. And so we make a vineyard specific bottling for each of those, but then also do some blends that are very particular to the Russian River Valley or into the different counties from California from where we're sourcing the fruit. So it's really exciting for me and my team to be to have such an integral role in the farming aspect of what we do, and being able to really bring grapes that are very, very much from a place and show that expression into the wines that we make and that we're able to offer for our guests.
That's amazing. I feel like you're reading off of my list of additional questions, because I was just going to ask about site specific and if you did a lot of like blending within the lots. So obviously you're in Russian River Valley, you're in Sonoma, and so unique terroir to the region. And so it sounds like you work really hard to try and show the place within you said, was it 10 Pinots that you have in your portfolio? Yeah. So obviously within that, I mean, you have so much ability to be creative as a winemaker to show the specificity of the plot that wine is being made from. What do you find is the most challenging thing for you as a winemaker? Is it trying to deal with the uniqueness of maybe the terroir that you have? Is it what is the most challenging thing for you?
That's a great question. I think given the fact that I've been at J for a number of years, and now I'm very intimately involved with each and every one of our properties, I know those properties inside and out. And so I think that drawing out the best characteristics of the terroir is it's almost second nature at this point. I think that look, as a winemaker, I'm at the mercy of Mother Nature, and so I think that's why a lot of winemakers are in this business, right? Is we enjoy the challenge of trying to harvest the best personality from the vineyards that we're working with, irrespective of what happens in the greater landscape of weather and whatever Mother Nature is bringing to the table. So, for example, we're approaching the 2023 harvest, and it's been a cool year. We got a lot of rain this winter. We had some cool spells during the spring, and the weather has been very temperate this summer. I personally am really excited about this vintage because I think that it could pan out to be just an epic vintage as long as the weather holds. But that's always the question mark, right? As you know, we're farmers and winemakers. We can't really see into our crystal ball about what's to come. But what we can do is anticipate all of the things that could happen and be ready for them when they do. So I always try to enter harvest with very Zen-like mental preparation. Knowing that anything can happen, but for me, that's part of the fun of the job.
That's awesome. So you've been with J Vineyards for 9 years. Obviously, the winery has an incredible heritage in the Sonoma region. Even before that, do you feel like you started doing anything differently when you became the head winemaker? Like, what was the creative spin that you feel you brought to the table that maybe changed things from your predecessors at the winery?
When I first joined J, first and foremost, I didn't want to rock the boat too much because I loved the profile of wines that were already being produced. However, I was able to see within the first year that there were some opportunities to tweak some things and to continue to build upon the previous winemaker's work. And so some of the things that I worked on specifically with sparkling winemaking were really driving style to a different echelon. So at that time, we made 11 sparklings. We had one more that we added to the lineup later. And I wanted to make sure that each of the sparklings was very differentiated from one another. Of course, the blends are always different. The aging regime is always different. There were already things that differentiated them, but I wanted those who are enjoying our wines to be able to really see the differences when they sit down and they taste our wines side by side. And so one of our wines, it's kind of our flagship. It's the wine that a lot of people know us for is our Cuvée 20 non-vintage sparkling blend. And so this had been made for a few years already before I joined the winery. But when I joined, I started to employ more neutral barrel fermentation, some more malolactic fermentation, lees stirring before we made up the blends in the cellar. What I wanted to do was drive the yeasty, toasty qualities and the complexity of the Cuvée 20 to a different level than we had done in the past, in order to make it distinctly different from some of the other offerings within our portfolio. So that's just one example. I can share others that we've employed with Pinot Noir winemaking. I think, I've pushed some of our indigenous fermentation a bit further than we had in the past. We now do some whole cluster fermentation, still not a lot of it, but just various techniques that we can employ in the cellar that are going to, again, kind of differentiate each of the individual lots that we bring in from one another and ultimately make more interesting wine.
That's awesome. I think one of the things that I appreciate so much about winemaking, as someone who's not a winemaker, is just that the winemaker can be so creative, right? So you can literally have the same grapes from the same plot, literally like neighbors, and two different winemakers they can have a style that can make the wines taste so different. So I know at the end of the day, you are dependent on Mother Nature, and you do really, the quality of grapes makes the biggest difference. But there's ability for the winemaker to be really creative in how they want to process those grapes. And I think the creativity of the winemaker really can play through that. And it's really cool to be able to find winemakers that you love and respect how they really can take the grapes from, the vine to the bottle. And it's really exciting to be able to see that come to fruition. And obviously there's a lot of respect around the work that you're doing, because as I mentioned earlier, Wine Enthusiast named you 2022 Winemaker of the Year, which is a huge achievement. So congratulations. That's amazing. If you had to put into words, why you think that happened, like, what do you think was kind of the moment where you feel like folks realized what an incredible job you were doing to warrant that amazing achievement?
Yeah, so being named Winemaker of the Year was something that I never in my wildest dreams ever expected. And I just still feel incredibly humbled for the acknowledgement. I don't think that this honor comes solely from making delicious wines, although I will say I think we do that very well at J. But I think there's other elements to factor in besides wine quality and the quality of our portfolio as a whole. For me, I've long been an advocate for advancing diversity within the industry, and especially supporting female representation within my own company and within the industry. And Jay recently, just this last year in 2022, started a guest chef program at our winery that we call Shifting the Lens. And in it, we brought in chefs from diverse backgrounds with different culinary talents, but that may have been underrepresented overall within the culinary industry. And so what we wanted to do was highlight their talents, bring them in, and showcase how our wines compare incredibly well with a variety of different cuisines. I mean, when you're talking about sparkling wine is something that is so versatile and can pair with such an incredible variety of different foods, different spice levels, different textures, different types of herbs. And so I think in doing so, we were able to showcase a broader diversity of different types of foods rather than just kind of the Eurocentric types of pairings that many people are used to. And I think including more diverse individuals in the program just has really helped to broaden people's perception of what we can do with food and wine. I think there's also something to be said about bringing more wine lovers into the category. As an industry, I think that if we want to thrive in the long term, we need to be inclusive and accessible in terms of how we welcome new people into wine, right? It shouldn't be an elitist beverage, and it shouldn't be so difficult to understand and to make a selection. At Jay, I think we've always been a leader in providing a welcoming atmosphere to everyone who steps through our doors, regardless of their background or their existing wine knowledge. And I truly believe that behind the high caliber, besides the high caliber wines that we're producing today, it's reasons like this that have allowed us to maintain and grow our loyal membership and following over the years. And so I'm proud to have played a role in some of those things. And so I've got to believe that that it's been some of these other elements that really helped support my my nomination as Winemaker of the Year.
Well, I can definitely concur that that has probably played a huge role, because I agree with you that we need more voices like yours that are really speaking into the industry to allow underrepresented individuals to have a seat at the table, to be able to share their story. I think understanding that wine is more than a beverage, right? It's a way to connect people. It's a way to show stories, and it's a way to be able to raise up voices, right? I mean, it really is more than just a business or a beverage. It's so much more. So I love that you see the full story, and you see an opportunity to be able to raise up others in what you're doing. So that's awesome, Nicole. You know, as a woman who is a winemaker, what kind of challenges did you face? Do you feel like you had some unique hurdles that you had to overcome being a female in the industry?
I do. When I first started out in the industry, and especially not coming from a wine family, I really had to figure out my own path, and there weren't very many female role models as that were heralded as industry leaders when I was entering the industry. There were a few, and those women are absolutely iconic, but there weren't a lot of them, and so there wasn't really a roadmap for how to progress as especially as a female winemaker. And at times I felt a little bit like an outsider, right? Over the years, I was able to forge professional relationships with different mentors, both male and female, just to help guide me along. But especially early, working in cellars where I was pretty much the only female in the area. It was always challenging. You know, you're in this busy cellar and you keep getting bypassed for all of the fun jobs because there's this perception that maybe, you know, you're not strong enough, or you know, you're not able to drag that hose or do that difficult job. And so I was really on a mission to prove myself. That was my approach: is I've got to prove myself, and then people will see. But what I found over time was that just simply proving myself wasn't it just wasn't enough. I needed to verbally advocate for myself as well. Otherwise the hard work didn't get noticed. And so that's something that I've really carried with me throughout my career. And honestly, it's something that I'm still working on. But I think for me, that was the biggest challenge.
If you had to share maybe one recommendation for whether it's a female or an underrepresented individual that would love to get into winemaking, what would be a tip that you would share with them as they're kind of looking into starting their career?
I would absolutely try and find somebody that you respect and trust, that is already in the industry, ideally in the area that you'd like to focus on, and connect with them. Ask them questions, get a sense of you know, what they think of your approach to the industry, if they have recommendations for career pathing, for additional educational resources, things like that. I think that that's invaluable. For me, I didn't have that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure those things out for myself. And ultimately it worked out, which is great. But I think we have representation across the industry now. Not enough. We're still making progress there, but there are people to talk to. There's people that can help guide you and that can make the process of growing in your field both more fun as well as more effective. So that would be my best advice.
I love that. I love hearing that you're such an advocate for supporting others in their career and helping women and underrepresented individuals and just young people in general learn more so that they can be in a better place to start their career with everything that you've learned. Kind of jumping back to the wines for a second, I have a question for you about your sparkling. So I think it's hard for consumers to not immediately compare sparkling wine to champagne, right? I think it's kind of the natural tendency for the consumer. So what would you say to a consumer that asked you, what's the difference between your sparkling wine and a champagne? How would you kind of explain that?
I get that question all the time, so it's fairly easy to explain. I will say that at J, we use a very traditional approach to our sparkling winemaking. We use 3 varieties that are very commonly represented in champagnes, and that's Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. It's only those 3 that we use in our sparkling blends. And we actually use a champagne-specific press at the winery. It's called a Cocard press, and 2 out of our 5 presses are Cocard presses. There's only a handful of Cocards in California, and we've got 2 of them, which is really great. They're extra gentle on our sparkling fruit, and to me, that's incredibly important because with sparkling wine, you've got to get everything right up front. You want purity of mouthfeel, you want low astringency and bitterness. Otherwise, those types of qualities are going to be amplified later on in the final bottle once it has bubbles and etc. So we use these very gentle presses, and then our techniques are very similar to a lot of champagne houses. So some of our fermentation is done in stainless steel tanks. Some of it's done in neutral barrels or in large neutral casks. And we blend the wine's age in the bottle actually for longer than is required in champagne. So our minimum is 24 months in the bottle, but we tend to go much longer. And so our process and our approach is actually very similar to champagne. What I will say is very different and certainly distinguishes us is the environment in which we're growing our grapes. And ultimately, it's the grapes that are going to express themselves most, far so over any types of process or things that we're doing from a winemaking perspective. And I like to say that our sparkling wines, they taste like they're unabashedly from California. We have Russian River Valley fruit that goes into every single sparkling wine that we make, regardless of whether it's appellated as Russian River Valley. And it's a very special region for a couple of reasons. The first is that we tend to have these beautiful warm days, just like today. I'm looking out the windows here at the winery, and the sun is shining. It's gorgeous and nice and warm. But this morning, when I was out in the vineyards, first thing in the morning, it was very, very foggy. It was cold. I was kind of bummed because I had taken my jacket out of my vehicle yesterday because it's summertime. Who needs a jacket? Well, turns out that you do need a jacket if you're hitting vineyards in the Russian River Valley on a summer morning. And so we get this beautiful fog, this lovely afternoon sunshine, and that really allows the grapes to express a good deal of fruit intensity, but also while retaining their acidity. So when I compare our wines at J to champagnes, and of course this is a very broad generalization and comparison, but I tend to think that our sparkling wines have more of a fruit forward character, more citrus, more of the tree fruits, sometimes some stone fruits, but they also have that additional layer of complexity. So some minerality, you get toasty brioche types of notes, creaminess to the palate, and this beautiful mousse on them that I think is very comparable to the champagnes that I know and love.
Awesome. And a perfect answer. So thank you so much. I think it helps for the listeners to understand the uniqueness to how you're making the wine. And I love that you spoke to the difference of the fruit, because at the end of the day, the place plays so much, right? We've been talking in our conversation about, how you have to have great fruit and it can speak to the place. And so it's not champagne, and it's not meant to be champagne, right? Like, you don't necessarily want to compare every sparkling wine to champagne because it's so unique based on the region where the fruit is from, and what is going to impact the terroir, right? What's going to impact the grapes to be unique from that region. And I think you can enjoy it, and some people might even find that they like it even more than champagne, right? You know, heaven forbid that we mention that, but yeah, like there's some amazing sparkling wines that are coming out of California. And I think folks sometimes, when they go out looking for a special occasion, they're only looking for champagne. But really, I think folks should be looking at some incredible sparkling wines like J Winery, sparkling wines that you have, because the quality is there, right? I mean, it's an incredible sparkling wine, and at a great price point, right? I mean, I think you have a great portfolio where there's some entry-level wines that are very affordable for the average consumer that are amazing quality as well, which is awesome. So
Well,
how about yes, yes, of course. I've been a big fan of J Vineyards for a long time, so haven't made it out to visit the winery yet. Hopefully can at some time in the near future, but have been a big fan of the wines for years. So yeah, I can definitely speak to the quality, and share that it is definitely something worth having at a celebration, not just champagne. So how about anything exciting for J Vineyards? Anything coming up this year, or, you know, at least around this harvest or after, that you're looking forward to?
most definitely. There's always a lot that we're looking forward to here at the winery, whether it's just harvest related or different events that are coming up. We have I mentioned the Shifting the Lens series that we've been working on earlier, but we're continuing it in 2023, which has been great. So we've already featured a Vietnamese chef, and then the upcoming residency is going to be happening this September, and we're going to be featuring Chef Anna Castro, who was named one of Food and Wine's Best New Chefs of 2022, and she's absolutely incredible. She'll be cooking food with a Mexican influence, as she was born in Mexico City, and that is her inspiration. So we're thrilled about that. And then we're also going to be bringing Chef Preeti Mistry back. So Chef Preeti was one of our chefs from last year, and they're so incredible. We wanted to bring them back for another round. So we're going to be bringing their menu outside the walls of the winery later this fall. So more to come, but we're incredibly excited about that.
That's awesome. So if any listeners wanted to come visit J Vineyards, obviously open for wine tourism, we can come to the cellar door and check things out.
Most definitely. Yeah, you can check us out on our website and book a reservation. There's a link on our website, but we have multiple different tasting experiences at the winery, which I encourage those who'd like to visit to consider each one. We have a signature tasting, which is, kind of your traditional bar experience, but we also have experiences where you can sit down, you can taste a flight of still or sparkling wines, pair them with the best cheese plate that you've ever had, or we have really our iconic bubble room experience. And so this was one of the first food and wine tasting experiences in Sonoma County. Our founder, Judy Jordan, really put us on the map for the bubble room. And it's been evolving ever since she started the program. But today it's multiple courses paired with wines that are exclusively from that are intended for our tasting room and wine club members. And the menu changes regularly. There's a very seasonal approach to it, and our chef Forrest Kellogg and his team are just doing an amazing job. It's a once in a lifetime. Well, I don't want to say once in a lifetime, because you can do it many times. We do have members who come for every single bubble room menu release. But what I will say is it's extremely memorable, and it's really one of those iconic J experiences.
Amazing. So it sounds like if you're planning a trip to Northern California, you have to swing by Sonoma, visit J Vineyards, because some really cool experiences. I love food and wine pairings, and so that's right up my alley. So I love hearing that. One last fun question for you, Nicole. So obviously you reached this incredible achievement of being winemaker of the year, right, from Wine Enthusiast. But the fun doesn't stop there. So how do you continue to stay inspired? What do you do to, keep learning and wanting to continue just perfecting the craft that you have as a winemaker?
When I first started in the industry, and I will say it's the same today, the more that I learn about wines, and there's always more to learn, the more I realize I don't know. And so it's just this perpetual motivation to just to continue to learn more, whether it's about the wines that I'm making, maybe it's about the region that I'm in, maybe it's about a region that's on the other side of the world. I've always find that inspirational. My team and I like to do tastings of different wine categories. Of course, that's always inspirational, and especially when you dig down into the details of how the wines are made. Sometimes you get really great ideas on different trials that we can run within our winery, or different techniques that we want to look at potentially implementing. We also like to go visit some of our friends at other winery properties, and invite them to come visit us as well. We always learn a lot from each other, and I think that's the best way to really forge a community throughout the wine industry, because that's what wine is all about when all is said and done, right? It's building community. It's sitting at a table with others, breaking bread, having conversation, and really opening up. And wine truly helps facilitate that.
I couldn't agree more. Well, Nicole, I so appreciate your time today. I love your perspective on lifting the veil and making things approachable for the average wine consumer. That's what we do here on the Wine CEO, right? So I love that. I love your passion around lifting up others in the industry. I love how you like to continue to learn. So I'm just so grateful for your time. I've learned a lot. I've appreciated your sharing your expertise and your passion with us today on the show. So thank you for joining us here on the Wine CEO podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Nicole Hitchcock from J Vineyards today. She was an awesome guest, and I loved hearing her story and learning about what she's doing to advocate within the wine industry. If you want to learn more about J Vineyards, you can check out their website, jwine.com. Everything is linked in today's show notes. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so you can keep getting lots more amazing wine content. If you have any questions about this episode or wine in general, don't hesitate to send me an email, sarah@thewineceo.com, or send me a DM on Instagram @thewineceo. Until next week, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all in the next episode of the Wine CEO podcast.